Hello all, welcome to Paritranaya. In this class, we shall discuss about another important topic, that is Vice President of India. In the previous class, we discussed about President of India, and in this class, we will be discussing about Vice President of India. So, we saw that the highest office in India is President's office, and the second highest office in India is of Vice President of India. Okay, Vice President of India. Next question arises, from where did we borrow the concept of Vice President? So, the concept of Vice President in India is modeled on United States of America's Vice President. So, in USA, we have Vice President. Similarly, based on that idea, we have introduced a concept called as Vice President. Next question that arises is, Vice President of India, whether he is elected or nominated. Okay, so here, Vice President of India is also elected. So how he is elected? He is elected indirectly. So here what we can do, we can just compare with the president and learn accordingly. It will be more beneficial. So President of India was also elected indirectly. Here Vice President of India is also elected indirectly. So who will participate in the election of the president, in the election of Vice President? So the common man of this country will not participate, but the elected representatives. So though we call it as electoral college. So who all will participate in the election of Vice President? So all MPs, okay, all MPs. So we have Lok Sabha MPs, we have Rajya Sabha MPs. So in Lok Sabha also we have elected and nominated. In case of Rajya Sabha also we have elected and nominated MPs. So here we need to remember the important difference between the election of president and election of vice president. When it comes to election of president, who will participate? Only the elected members of Lok Sabha, elected members of Rajya Sabha, and elected members of legislative assemblies of states and union territories of Delhi and Puducherry. But when it comes to vice president election, elected members will participate and also nominated members of Lok Sabha will participate. Similarly, elected members of Rajya Sabha and nominated members of Rajya Sabha. So that's why we have used the term all MPs. Okay, both elected as well as nominated members of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha will participate in the election of the vice president. Whereas MLAs or members of legislative assemblies, they participate in the election of president, but they do not participate in the election of vice president. Very important difference. Okay, very important difference. Next. So we follow the system of proportional representation. So PR indicates proportional representation. STV here indicates I used a short form, single transferable vote. Okay, so already in a separate video or in a separate class we have discussed about what is proportional representation and what is single transferable vote. So you can just go back to that class and watch the video to understand what is proportional representation and what is single transferable vote. So we follow the proportional representation and single transferable vote in presidential election. The same kind of system is also followed in vice president's election. Okay, vice president election. And we have already discussed about secret ballot. What is secret ballot? So whosoever is casting their vote, they need not disclose to whom they are casting their vote. Okay, they can cast it secretly. So that's why it is called as secret ballot. Okay, secret ballot. So very important. So Vice President of India is elected indirectly, and the electoral college consists of all MPs, both nominated as well as elected members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And it is carried out through proportional representation, single transferable vote, and secret ballot. Okay, secret ballot. Next, qualifications. So when it comes to qualifications, it is very much obvious that a person who is contesting for vice president's election, he should be a citizen of India. Okay, citizen of India. Next, one more important qualification is a person who wants to contest for Rajya Sabha election, so vice president's election, he should have all the qualities, he should have all the qualifications necessary to become member of Rajya Sabha, But one exception. What is that exception? In order to become a Rajya Sabha member, you should be 30 years. But in order to become Vice President of India, you should be 35 years. Very important. Okay. All the qualifications to become member of Rajya Sabha, with the exception that is he should have attained at least 35 years. Okay, 35 years. Next, a person who is holding office of profit cannot contest for vice president's election. Okay, vice president's election. So an example of office of profit can be like this. For example, someone is serving in a government company as a managing director. So that position is called as office of profit. That position is called as office of profit. Office of profit. So now the person who is holding such office of profit, he cannot contest for vice president's election. Okay, vice president's election. So in such cases, okay, but there are few exceptions. What are those exceptions? A person who is president of India or vice president of India, or person who is a minister or person who is a governor. So these positions, they are not considered as office of profit. They are not considered as office of profit. It means a person who is a president, a person who is a vice president, or a person who is a minister or who is a governor, he is eligible to contest for vice president's election. He is eligible to contest for vice president's election. Okay. In this context, we need to remember that our constitution does not consist of the definition of office of profit. So what exactly is the office of profit? We do not have the definition of the same in our constitution. But whether the term office of profit appears in our constitution, yes, it does. It appears. Okay, it appears. Next, if a person wants to contest for vice president's election, so single-handedly he cannot file a nomination. He requires supporters. So how many supporters? First, 20 people should say yes. Okay, 20 MPs should say yes, and that should be seconded by 20 extra MPs. It means he requires the support of at least 40 MPs to contest for vice president's election. Important. Next, oath. So we have seen when it comes to president, so when president enters the office, so who will administer the oath? Chief Justice of India will administer the oath. Similarly, after election, before starting performing the duties, so vice president will take oath, but who will administer the oath to vice president? President will administer the oath to vice president of India. Okay, so the contents of oath are not important. Okay, UPSC will never focus on those aspects. So here we need to understand that President of India administers oath to vice president. Okay, next, conditions of office. It means in order to become vice president of India, he should not be an MP or MLA. If at all he is an MP or MLA, then he has to resign to that position, or after getting elected as vice president, he has to resign to the position of MP or MLA. Okay, MP or MLA. Next, term. Once a person becomes vice president, so for how long he will remain as vice president? For 5 years. Okay, so let us assume on January 1, 2023, if a person becomes vice president 21, then he will remain till December 30, 2025. Okay, so for 5 years period, he will remain as a vice president of India. So can he resign? Yes, vice president can resign. To whom he can send his resignation? Vice president can send his resignation letter to President of India. Next, can he be removed? Yes, similar to President of India. So in case of president, we call it as impeachment, but in case of vice president, we call it as removal. So he can be removed. How he can be removed? Through Rajya Sabha resolution. Okay, resolution with what kind of majority? Absolute majority. It means among 245 members of Rajya Sabha, absolute means 123. If 123 members of Rajya Sabha say yes, and similarly, if the same is accepted by the Lok Sabha by 273 majority, because 273 is half of 545, that is total strength of Lok Sabha. So if it is accepted by 123 members of Rajya Sabha and the same has been okayed by 273 members of Lok Sabha, then Vice President of India is removed. Okay, is removed. So similarly, you can have a comparison with President of India. So what kind of majority is required? 2/3 majority in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Okay, similar to President, in order to remove Vice President, before removing him, we have to give him a notice of 14 days. Okay, so immediately we cannot remove him. We have to give him a notice of 14 days. Another very important difference between President and Vice President. In case of President, whenever we want to impeach, when we want to remove President, so are there any reasons, are there any grounds based on which he can be removed? Yes. So if at all President violates the Constitution of India, then itself President can be removed. Okay, if he violates Constitution of India, then he can be removed. So whether the definition of violation of Constitution has been given in our Constitution? No, the definition has not been given. But here in case of Vice President, no ground has been specified. So based on what reasons Vice President can be removed? So such reasons have not been given in Constitution. Very important point to remember. Next, beyond 5 years continues. So now once he assumes the office on January 1, 2021, he will continue till December 30, 2025. So before December 30, 2025, elections should take place. But in case election do not happen within these 5 years, okay, do not happen within these 5 years or before the deadline. So let us assume election will take place in 2026 March, okay, March. So for these 2 months, who will remain as Vice President of India? So this is the question. So very important. Beyond 5 years, the person who is serving as Vice President, so he himself will continue for the remainder period, for the extra period of 2 months. Okay, 2 months. Next, whether a person is re-eligible for Vice President's position? Yes, a person who is serving as Vice President. Next, whenever election for Vice President comes, then again he can contest. He is eligible for what? Recontesting. Okay, recontesting any number of times. Next, vacancy. So when will Vice President's position become vacant? So one is when his tenure expires. When 5 years expire, then his position will become vacant. Another one is when he resigns by submitting his resignation letter to President of India. Next is when Vice President dies, then his position will become vacant. Similarly, when he is removed by Rajya Sabha resolution and okayed by Lok Sabha, then also that position becomes vacant. Okay, vacant. So when tenure expires, he has to what? Election within expiry. Before the expiry of the 5 years itself, election has to take place. Okay, election has to take place. Next, one more very important. Full 5 years means a person who has been elected as Vice President. So let us assume this is 5 year period. Okay, 5 year period. So let us assume after 2.5 years, so this Vice President who is called as A, so A resigns. Let us assume person A who is Vice President, he resigns. So we'll go for election. So new president will come. So let us call B. So when new person B becomes Vice President, whether he will remain as Vice President for just remaining 2.5 years or complete 5 years. Okay, so very important. He will remain as Vice President for complete 5 years and not for the remainder period. So that is this point. Okay, when a new president is elected, he will remain as Vice President for complete 5 years. Next, election disputes. So whenever any dispute arises with respect to the election of Vice President, it means someone might raise a complaint that election have not taken place properly. So if someone raises the dispute, so who will resolve the dispute? Supreme Court has the power to resolve the dispute, and whatever the decision the Supreme Court takes, that will be final. Next, no one can challenge in Supreme Court based on the grounds that electoral college was incomplete. Okay, no, electoral college incomplete is no challenge ground. What does it mean? Now in Lok Sabha there are 545 MPs. So let us assume on the day of election of Vice President only 300 people are present. Now somebody goes and files in the Supreme Court a case saying that electoral college, all the 545 members were not present, only 300 were present. So that's why we were unable to elect a proper Vice President. So please declare the election void. So if someone makes such kind of plea in Supreme Court, then Supreme Court will not accept it, because electoral college incomplete, it is not a ground for challenge. Okay, it is not a ground for challenge. Very important. Next, election if declared void. Let us assume someone takes a case to Supreme Court, and for some reason, Supreme Court gives a judgment that whatever the election has taken place, it is void. Okay, it is void. It means, let us assume, so on January 1, 2030, a person A became Vice President of India. On January 30, 2023, Supreme Court declares that election of A is invalid. Election of A is invalid. But A has already worked as Vice President of India for 1 month. Okay, so whatever actions he has taken, so whether they will remain in force or they will become invalid. Okay, so very important, acts remain in force. So whatever work he has done in this 1 month, it is not invalidated, it will remain in force. Very important. Next, we shall look into the powers and functions. So he is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. So by default, Vice President of India is chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay, chairman of Rajya Sabha. Next, he also acts as president. So Vice President, he plays multiple roles. He acts as president and he also acts as chairman of Rajya Sabha. So normally Vice President acts as chairman of Rajya Sabha. Then when will Vice President act as president? Later on. But one thing to remember, Vice President can act either as Chairman of Rajya Sabha or as President. He cannot perform both the roles simultaneously. It means when he is performing the role of President of India, then this role will be performed by someone else. Okay, someone else. We shall look into it. So he acts as President. Who? Vice President acts as President when President has resigned. If President resigns, then he will act as President. If President is removed, okay, removed or impeached, at that time also Vice President can act as President. Next, if President dies, then also Vice President can act as President. Okay, can act as President. Very important point to remember, whatever may be the case, but only for 6 months. It means Vice President can act as President for maximum period of 6 months. It means within the period of these 6 months, new President has to be elected. New President has to be elected. Next, other cases is when President is absent or President is suffering from some illness. At that time also, Vice President of India can play the role of President. Okay. Next, no chair duties performed. Deputy chair. Okay. So when Vice President is acting as President, he will not be performing the duties of Chairman of Rajya Sabha. So at that time, who will be performing the duties of the Chairman of Rajya Sabha? At that time, Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha will be performing the duties of the Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay, very important. Okay? Very important. In the book, they have given a comparison about Indian and American Vice Presidents comparison. Okay, so this comparison is not important from UPSC exam point of view. So as the syllabus is very bulky, we have to be very wise, and we need to understand the things which are important and which are ignorable. So this part is ignorable. Okay, this part is ignorable. So we need not focus on this part. Okay. So in this class we discussed about what? Vice President. So his election procedure, next his powers and everything. Okay. So similarly, in the forthcoming classes, we will be discussing about all the other important polity related topics. For all our further updates, subscribe to our channel and hit on the bell icon. Thank you.